Hey, welcome to the Hired AV podcast. My name is Joe Way, and I am your host. And we have a good one for you today. And the reason we have a good one, there's two sides, okay? Newish HETMA member, but also when I scope people out, I uh, I kind of I look at their LinkedIn and stuff, and I loved his about section, so that made me reach out and say, hey, I'd love to have you on the show. I love kind of growing our community and introducing you all to new people, because we're all in this big old AV pond together. But also, I'm back in it. I know people had reached out and said, hey, what's going on with the show? Well, I started a new job 13 weeks ago. So here we're back in. Show is back. I'll call it a season, whatever. I don't know. What do we have? Even up to episode 229. I don't know if there's seasons or anything, but with no further ado, let's get into everyone's favorite part of the show. And that's when I stop talking. And Jeff, thank you for joining. Please tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name's Jeff Yette, and I am the Manager of Customer Service and Communications for the Office of Information Technology at Clarkson University in upstate New York.
All right. Now that is a mouthful. That
It is
is
a
that is
mouthful.
a title of titles. So
It
what
is.
does that actually mean? What do you do day to day?
So I am the manager of the IT help desk and all things AV for the university. So classroom technology, AV support for events, yeah, and then all the inbound tech support for the university.
All right. So yeah, so that's quite a group. So how many are on your team there and stuff?
Total team is including myself. There's 7 of us. So I have 2 help desk individuals. I have 2. Refer to them as satellite technicians, but basically they do like the tier 1 or tier 2, tier 3 support. And then I have 2 AV technicians. Actually, refer to them as audiovisual systems engineers.
Oh, another big old fancy title for
Yes, yes,
pushing
yeah,
carts around. No, I mean just
yeah,
that. No.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So let's walk through. I love one of my favorite things to do is let's walk people through history and kind of how you got to where you're at. So walk us through. How'd you get started in the AV industry and all of that?
So as everyone probably can guess, I was a fine arts major in college because that's the natural path into IT. No, so I started out right after high school, going to college for essentially graphic design, and I wanted to get into. So this is the late '80s, early '90s. So I wanted to get into desktop publishing and graphic design, which is obviously very computer oriented. It was kind of new at the time, so there wasn't a lot of college courses that were designed for that. But anyway, so right after college, I went and did that for 4.5 years. And then so I worked for a multi-publication newspaper in charge of the graphic design and layout. We were all Macintosh based because that was those were the people that were doing it at the time. And then I kind of took a break from that, kind of tried to do some soul searching. I'm also an amateur musician and DJ, so I've been doing that for years. So I had a pretty good rapport going on with our local music store, the typical type guitar shop that every small town had. And they kind of asked me what I was doing. I'm like, yeah, I don't really know right now. I'm trying to find myself. So I went and worked for them for about 1.5 years, and that really got me more into the pro AV side of the stuff. So I really had to learn more stuff than what I did in my own little world. So I had to know like all things of like amps and mixers and live audio support and all that other stuff that I hadn't really done before. And then it opened up a couple of other opportunities where I had like a 7-year stint of running sound for a local opera house. Again, sounds fancy, but small, like a 280 seat vintage opera house. But they would have touring musicians come through, and so they needed a sound tech to do that. So I did that for quite a few years. And then meantime, after I worked at the music shop for a couple of years, so this would have been, I want to say like 95-ish or somewhere around there. A local telco, like a mom and pop shop telephone company, where was getting into offering dial-up internet service in our area. and they were looking for somebody to had a Macintosh experience to do web page design and also Macintosh support for their customers. So I had kind of the design and wanted to get into websites because that was sounded new and cool at the time, and I had the Mac background. So I applied for a job there, got the job, and that kind of morphed over. I was with the company for about 20 years, and that kind of morphed over a bunch of different roles. I ran a 24-seat inbound tech support call center for a number of years for them. Got into some fiber to the home offerings where I was both kind of on the front side marketing side of it and in sales, and then also in kind of doing some back office stuff, what they refer to as central office work. And then about 6 years ago, actually one of my former employees that I had at the telco was working for Clarkson University, and she got ready to move on. And she kind of knew that maybe I might have been looking to make a change. She says, "Hey," she goes, I'm taking another job. My position is going to be opening up. I really think you'd be good for it." She encouraged me to apply, and I didn't. Um, and then she reached out to me like a couple weeks later. She's like, "Hey," that job is still open. They did a round of interviews and they didn't really find somebody, but they're really so if you are interested in making a move, this would probably be a good time." So I applied for the job. It was a little bit of a abbreviated hiring process because they had already gone through one iteration of everything. So it all happened pretty quick. But then I made the decision to come here, and it's been a great move. I inherited a great crew. A couple of those people have moved on and retired, and I've been able to recruit in some new people that have really been a great fit. So it's been it was a good change, and part of that. So that is the two sides of it, is the tech support side and the AV side of it. So I've had like 20 plus years of amateur, pro audio musician stuff and running sound for events and different venues, and then kind of now moved into the higher education space where we're doing classroom build outs and NPR build outs and that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, because I came through live events too. I mean, that was my thing, entertainment industry here in LA, and then moving into I started Cal Baptist and then USC and now UCLA, and it's like that commercial integration side. How was that change for you? Like, because do you miss, like I always miss the adrenaline rush a little bit of the live events, but on the other hand, I like 9 to 5.
yeah. So we still get both. I mean, so we still do a fair amount of live event stuff, and this is although they're a little more like planned. So I am still a gigging musician, so I still get that that adrenaline rush from that, from going and setting up and performing in front of people. But here at the university, I mean, we still do live events for all sorts of different things, which is great. So we do like 2 robotics competitions like twice a year, where we have uh, high school and middle school kids from all over the state coming in and doing competitions. And we have to set up to do the AV for that and live streaming. And we have our larger graduation ceremonies that we hold in a hockey arena. So there's obviously like nothing there. So so they have to set up stage and chairs, and we have to bring in audio and build that all out. And but yeah, so the 9 to 5 stuff of it is kind of neat. That was new for me, of the more planning and building out classroom spaces, and that was also new technology for me then, because it was getting in more into the control systems. Were primarily an Extron shop, so I hadn't done any of that stuff before. I mean, I was uh, still primarily in the analog, mixer era, like literally pulling out like a 16 or a 32 channel Mackie board and running a whole bunch of cables, and starting to get into a little bit more of the higher end pro audio stuff on, outside of work. But like the Extron stuff and getting the DSP and Dante routing and that sort of stuff, that's been really neat.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that.
I remember all that. Like when I made that move, it was weird that uh like I would say it was weird to have I don't know what the right word is, like the difference, the control system stuff, like
Yeah.
because
Yep.
the same thing. You sit there and go, wait, you mean you're going to set up something and you're going to install it and you don't have to set up and tear down and have a fader and mix and all that stuff right after
Right.
the
Yep.
classes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So that's been so that was kind of neat, on the other side, things like um kind of the IP based mixing desks and stuff were starting to come out. So you had like the Behringer X Airs and the QSC Touch Mix stuff, which kind of like, those are kind of like a hybrid sort of. Still, you still get the analog feel out of them a little bit, but then it's nice to be able to walk around a room with an iPad and check sound from different places.
Hmm.
But yeah, so the classroom and our event spaces, where you've got, where you get to go in and you can kind of tune the system and tweak it, and then there's just a touch panel permanently mounted in the room, and you got to just go in and activate the system, and everything's ready to go. Maybe plug in a few cables here and there for some auxiliary mics that aren't there in a standard classroom situation, um, but yeah, so that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
100%. Now, you said something I got to get back to. You said you're
Okay.
still performing musician or an event. So what do you play? What?
Well, there's a keyboard that sits in front of me, but I would never really say that I'm a keyboard or a piano player. It's kind of a little bit of chord fills here and there, but do a lot of the vocals for the group. We're just the typical 4 to 5 piece,
What do you
bar
play?
cover band.
Yes.
Little bit of everything up here. So I mean, we do classic rock, country. You had mentioned, kind of when we were chatting ahead of time, that we're right on pretty close to the Canadian border in upstate New York. So we get a lot of Canadian music influences. Like lots of times, the Canadian radio stations played better music than our local radio stations. So growing up, it was listening to a lot of Canadian music. So that still kind of flows into our music selection. So a lot of things like Bryan Adams and Tragically Hip, which probably you've never even heard of them. Yeah, so there's a lot of bands that are kind of super popular in Canada and right along the border, but you get maybe like 3 hours south and nobody knows who they are. Tragically Hip was a really, really popular band. The lead singer passed away a couple years back. But they would sell out like major arenas in Canada, in Ottawa, and then they'd go down to like Virginia area and they'd play in a bar for 300 people because
Mhm.
like nobody knew who they were. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
but
that's
yeah,
rad.
no, yeah, it's a lot of fun. We do a lot of fundraising community service events too. So like, if there's some type of a fundraising thing go on, we'll just go over and set up and play for free and entertain people. And it's fun.
All right,
Certainly don't do it.
what's your go-to song?
Oh, and up here, pretty much anything Tragically Hip. New Orleans is Sinking. That's a really popular song. Um, but I'll send you a link afterwards so you can give it
100%. I
give it
need
a
that.
listen. Yeah.
100%. That
Yeah.
is awesome. And
Yeah.
and what's the name of the band?
The name of the band is Plan B. We had another, which is a really kind of an odd story. I was in another group that was formed by two brothers. One of the brothers got into a little bit of trouble. I won't go into details there, but got arrested. And this is really back before the days of cell phones were too popular. So it was still answering machines at home. I was away for a few days. I came back home, had a whole bunch of messages on my answer machine. They're like, "Hey, what's going on with the band? I hear there's something going on." I'm like, "I have no idea what you people are talking about." They're like, "Oh, well, I don't want to tell you, but the one guy got in trouble, and we heard he's in jail." And so I called up his brother who was in the band. And he's like, "Yeah, there's something going on. I don't know." But he was emotionally distraught. He's like, "I can't." And this was like on a Wednesday, and we had gigs booked like that Friday and Saturday, just like 2 days later. So I called the venue and I'm like, "Hey, we can't play. I don't know what's going on, but one of the guys is unavailable, and I knew the venue owner pretty well. I'm like, so I don't know what you want me to do. I'm like, do you want to just cancel music for the weekend? Do you want me to help you find other musicians? Do you want me to see if I can just get another band?" He's like, "I trust your judgment, whatever you want to do." So I called another friend's band, and so we were booked back to back Friday and Saturday at the same place. And on the Friday, half of their band couldn't make it, but it was the half that we had. So it's like, oh, it's like my drummer and me doing vocals are available, and his guitar player and his bass player could do it. So like, okay, so for Friday night, we'll just mash these two groups together and we'll play. And then for Saturday night, the whole other band was available. So I called the venue owner back. I'm like, hey, I pieced together a group for Friday, but and Saturday the other band's gonna play. He's like, okay, so who do you want me to say is playing Friday? I'm like, I don't know. I'm literally just throwing together plan B for you for Friday night. So I'm like, you whatever you want. And so we showed up to the venue that night, and like on their marquee on their sign outside, they said Friday night plan B, and it stuck. So, and it's been like over a decade now since that happened, probably more like 15 years. And so for a while, we had a bunch of stuff booked out. So we were literally running with plan B. We were just finding whatever friends and musicians we knew that could fill in with us until we settled on a pretty steady lineup of guys. So
that is right. See, and then people wonder why I don't script episodes,
right,
because you don't get gold like this.
I don't know about gold, but
you can't. That is awesome. Now I feel like I need to come and I need to listen to you. All right, so a couple of things. So I want to get back to something you have on your LinkedIn that I absolutely loved, because you say a few things that you talk about a strong marketing and sales background, right?
Yep.
And this like customer centric approach to everything, which I actually am huge on. Everyone has listened to me enough knows that one of my taglines is all of life is sales. Everything is customer service. Everything, and I would argue that we are not in the technology industry. We're in the customer service industry. And we just use technology as the mode for providing our customer service. So talk a little bit about that. Talk about your beliefs with that, your thoughts on sales, on customer service and all that.
Yeah. So, that 20-year stint I had at the telco, it really was, I kind of moved around a lot, just because the company was evolving. It started out literally as like a 10-employee small rural telephone company. And then when the internet boom started, they started out as providing dial-up internet service. They got into fiber to the home, doing triple play, so we were doing IPTV, broadband internet, and IP phone service. So throughout different aspects of it, I was kind of always involved in, because the tech support side of it kind of was growing, right? We'd go in bursts and we'd hit a plateau, and it's like, okay, so everyone now has some extra bandwidth available. So what else can we take on to help grow the company? So I kind of was in and out of the sales and marketing aspect of it. So like I said, I started out doing the website, which really was fairly static at the time, because this was like the early mid 90s. So websites weren't that flashy at the time. But we're a very rural area. So to kind of give you an idea of how rural we are, I know one of the things that's on my LinkedIn bio is that I think I'm also a board member for our local school, the district that we live in. K through 12 is, I think total is somewhere between 300 and 400 students total. So a typical graduating class is under 30 people. So my daughter's a junior. I think she has 27 people or 28 people in her class. So really, really small. So when we're going out, when we were building out fiber to the home and going into these rural communities, the easiest way to basically get in touch with those people and let them know what we're doing was to hold town hall meetings. So we literally would get a hold of the municipality, which we had to have a relationship anyway because of the regulations of some of the fiber to the home stuff. You had to have, they called franchise agreements so you could go in. And so we already have a relationship with them. We're like, hey, we'd just like to come in literally to your town hall, to your community room, and set up one night and do a meet and greet and let people know. And we would grill hot dogs for the community and do all that stuff. And and just kind of answer their questions and just let them know it's like, hey, we're a real company, we're real people, we're trying to provide a real value to you with the service. And then so kind of that was one part of it. There was also some technical sales when we were doing the call center. because we were providing outsourced services for other companies. So we had 20 or 30 different companies that we were providing tech support for. So yeah, I mean, for me, it always is, it's not that the customer is always right, but I mean, without the customer, and depends on what you want to define as a customer, then if we don't have customers, then we don't have business.
Mhm.
So I was always like, okay, well, let's take a customer centric approach to this. And it's like if I was a customer, what would I want out of the service, or what would I want out of this experience? As far as like, hey, I'm having a problem, I got a call for help. How would I want to be treated? How would I want to be this situation be handled? So kind of take a lot of that into everything that we do. And sometimes I know customers haven't had the best experience. And so sometimes you just have to let them vent for a little bit and say, okay, yeah, I hear you. Yep. I understand your frustrations. I know you haven't had the best experience up to here. But there's still value in us having a relationship. So let's figure out what we can do to solve the problem that's immediately in front of us. And then how can we work on, repairing and mending that relationship and moving forward. So, and it's the same here at the university. I mean, at the university, sometimes, people do get caught up in the heat of the moments, especially what we refer to as like classroom emergencies. They walk into a classroom and it's 5 minutes before the class is supposed to start, and they try to turn things on, and it's not not working the way that they expected it to be. It's often something simple, but it's just like, okay, yep, no, we'll be right there. We immediately deploy people. We have my team is kind of strategically scattered across the academic spaces, so that we're no more than one building away, with the exception of we do have like some satellite locations. But the core Hill campus, we've got people no more than one building away from an academic space. So we can usually get there in just a couple minutes, help them out with a problem, and then afterwards, maybe it's a re-education thing. It's like, okay, yep, like this, you're teaching new to the space. Although we've kind of tried to standardize all the classrooms and all technology, there's always going to be one or two outliers that things are just slightly different. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yep, this was a new space for you. So, hey, let's set up time afterwards. Let's find some free time where myself or my supervisor, who's in charge of all of learning technologies, where, one of us can come in and meet with you. We'll review the technologies in that space. We'll see if we can make accommodations if things aren't quite the way that you need them to be or want them to be. But yeah, I mean, we both want the same thing. We want to provide a good service, and the customer, again, however you define that, obviously wants to have a good experience themselves. So,
yep, 100%.
Yeah.
'Cause I always think, that's also a great way to really just build bridges, taking that, that mentality, because, no one wants to call and say they're having problems. No one wants to be in that situation, nor do we want them to be. And I think you're right on, and just saying, if I was having problems, how would I want to be treated with this?
Yep.
How can we find the solution? And also, like you said, the retrainings, or a lot of times that's just it, it's just,
Yep. Yeah.
So, all right. So let me ask you then, true or false? The customer is always right.
False.
Explain.
So so I will say the customer is always right, giving their perspective or understanding at the time that they place the call or that they contact you. But they're not always right, because sometimes you've provided them with some resources that they either for whatever reason couldn't get access to or didn't bother to access. So heading into every semester, we do multiple sessions of like, hey, we have these, we're going to do these little webinars or these little meet and greets, and if you have questions about, the stuff that we use, come in and talk to us, or we'll show you how to do it. And sometimes they can't get to them, or sometimes they just don't. So then they'll step into a classroom that they may not be familiar with. And it's something as simple as like, they didn't push the power button on the monitor, or the Extron controls has a volume knob on it and it has to be turned up pretty loud, fairly loud before you can hear it. So no, they're not always right, because we'll claim it's like, oh, the stuff is just broken, it doesn't work. but they are right from the perspective of it doesn't work the way that I think it should, or it doesn't work the way that I understand that it would.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a yes and a no. But I mean, but in the simplest, no, they're not always right.
Yeah, all right. So, that was good. That was a good answer, but you'll surprisingly, that's a controversial one,
Yeah.
So absolutely agree with that. So
Yeah.
now going back to, you have that marketing sales background. Like, how do you apply that, especially as a manager, throughout your department, as opposed to just thinking, okay, everything is technology.
Right. So my immediate supervisor, Laura, we're kind of on the same page with the mindset of this stuff. We want to do, we want to provide people with enough information so that they can kind of self-service, self-support, and it's not just to deflect the need from us, because if we did a great job of that, then we wouldn't have jobs. Like if people didn't need tech support, then I'm out of work. So so I mean, we actually do a pretty good job of trying to find what are some of the different points where we can get information in front of people to try to market or advertise the services that we have available. So we've taken advantage of a bunch of different things. So in our classroom, in all of our classrooms, we can control the desktop image, so the lock screen. So we have information that's right on our lock screen about how to get a hold of tech support, how you're doing that. Over this winter break, we're going to add some additional signage to a lot of our lecterns, podiums. We have what we refer to as the Windows P problem a lot. I don't know if that rings true for you. So we do have our systems operate primarily as a dual screen system. So you have the monitor in front of you on the podium, but then you either have the primary screen, whether it's a projector or a large LCD. The way that our system works is the system always sees that primary display as being active, even if the device itself is turned off. So Extron treats that as an active connection. So if the monitor on the podium is shut off and you're trying to log in, your login screen is on a device that's actually not displaying the image.
Yeah.
And so now we could lock it down so that the displays are always extended or are just duplicated. But we haven't want to do that because some people really like doing the dual screen monitor, like doing PowerPoints in presenter mode so that they got their notes there and that sort of stuff. And the people that are tech savvy enough to make that change, unfortunately, aren't always tech courteous enough to undo that change when they leave the classroom. So if they extend their desktop, they don't necessarily put it back to duplicate when they leave. So we're providing some different documentation for people. Just say, hey, so before you call, just check these 2 or 3 things, And again, it's not to deflect it from us, but it's to give them a better experience, so they don't have to delay the start of class, or they don't have to have the awkwardness of a tech support rep walking in and just pushing a button. It's like, hey, check these few things first. We have, we have a campus announcement system that just sends out email notifications. We do, we have a digital signage solution on campus too. A lot of screens around the space that we will let people know about, recent changes or coming changes. We recently went through a find me, follow me printing solution rather than individual printers with specific queue names and all that stuff. So now you just print to one queue, and then regardless of where you are, you card swipe your ID and we'll spit out your documents for you. So, but that was a big change for people. So we made sure we had a lot of signage at those printing stations to let people know that the change was coming. I mean, the old printers like, oh, don't forget, we're making this change in a couple weeks, and this is how things are going to be different, and this is how it's going to. What you'll have, you'll now have to have your ID with you when you go to the printer to get something, rather than just sending it to the printer and walking up to it, and it's going to be a stack of papers there, and you've got to sort through it and find out which one is yours. So, so I mean, we do a lot with signage and taking advantage of the screens that we have around campus to let people know, hey, these are the things that are going on.
Yeah, and I think that you nailed on something. Is a lot of it, I don't say necessarily training, but it's a lot of it's the changes, the unsure, we get comfortable with how it is at our home, especially
Yeah.
post pandemic, right, where we all got used to
Right.
setting up our home, and so what we're used to, we have our windows in the places they're set. We know, we've got all of our little quirks, our personal quirks, right? So then you walk into a classroom space and it doesn't work the same way. It's not that, and that's where you get those calls saying, hey, there's something wrong with the room. No, it's just different, you know and I think that, and that education of the customer, I think, is really the huge part. And there's comfort. I mean, I always feel bad about faculty who have to call because it's embarrassing in a way, right? Because especially because it's like
Right.
they did earn a PhD, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. This is definitely more educated than the people that are coming in to help them out, for sure. But like I said, it sometimes it is, um, for lack of better words, like sometimes you don't want to go in and make them feel stupid because it's just like,
Hmm.
oh, it's like literally the monitor is powered off. So we're primarily a Wacom or a Wacom, however you prefer to
Yeah.
pronounce it, pen touch tablet display as the main monitor on the lectern. Well, we've got a couple different models of them, and the power button's located in different places on them.
Mhm.
So if they've been used to one model and the power button is on the left hand side and they're in one space and the monitor's not on, and they can't find the power button, but because it's in the middle of the back of the screen. So I mean, something like that. So sometimes it is you do feel a little uncomfortable walking in, and it is something as simple as like, oh, just walking over, pushing a button, and they're like, oh, that's all it was. Or like, yeah, sorry, So again, so we're gonna try to provide some additional signage and instructions, in the classrooms to try to, avoid those situations.
Mhm. That's why don't you tell your people just hit a lot of extra buttons too, even if you know it's something simple, to make it look
Yeah.
like it's more no, like,
Yeah.
just start hitting all this different stuff even though you really know it's just one thing.
Yeah.
Alright,
I
no,
have I have it, but that might be a good tactic. It's like, yeah, oh no, this it was a really big problem. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. Unlock the back of the lectern, look at all the wires for a second and just like, yeah.
It's like,
Oh
what
no,
did
there
you
was something loose in there. You couldn't have fixed it. It was
what'd you do? Just I put the ON-OFF modulator to the positive position, you know? Alright, okay, so now, we're gonna go to I'm looking forward to this part because I think I got some good questions for you. Rapid round,
Sure.
okay? So this part of the show, really, there is, it's just random questions that have no right or wrong answers, unless I have an opinion of my own, in which case you could have a wrong answer. Um, I just kind of make these up as I go along based on the conversation we've had, but everyone does get the same first question.
Okay.
Higher ed is something very unique, right? We're about traditions. So, what is your favorite college tradition?
Oh, wow. So here at Clarkson, it's got to be hockey, D1 hockey. And so my history at Clarkson actually goes back a little bit more than just the 5 years of me being here. So my father worked in the physical plant for 30 some years, from
Oh,
the late 60s to the early 90s. So I grew up as a Clarkson brat, so to speak. I also in college worked here. I didn't go to college here. I went to a neighboring SUNY college. I did cross register with a couple stuff, but being the employee or being the son of an employee, I could get summer employment here, and so I did some summer stuff here. And one of the times when I was here, what was brand new then, the new Division I hockey arena was being built, and so I was working in the engineers. Office, helping them with some blueprints and floor plans, converting them to electronic versions of them, because this was still very analog, paper oriented at the time. And I remember the vendor for the seat company coming in and bringing in multiple different versions of seats that they could select from, and so we got to go, do a test in the seats. It's like, oh, go down. We want some feedback on what model seats were you like, and the one I liked they didn't pick, so they picked something else. But no, but D1 hockey definitely. Like I said, I grew up as a kid watching the hockey here. We've been season ticket holders before we were employees. We are season ticket holders now. So yeah, so hockey here at Clarkson is a big thing.
The funny thing, the only people who ever bring up hockey on this show are people from New York, like upstate New York ish. Boston area and Canada. That's
Yeah,
it. That's it.
yeah, hockey is big here in the Northeast in Canada. I mean, we've got, I think, more cold months than we do nice months. So
Yeah. So yeah, I guess
hockey season is a very long season.
yeah, something I can't get. I've been to two games, but they were both Ducks games,
Yep.
Anaheim. Um,
Yeah.
and they were both from suites where you're just really watching the game, on the screen,
Right.
talking to people, having a beer. So I don't
Yeah.
even know if that counts. And then you hear some screaming, so you run out and kind of look down, and then it's already over. So you just watch it.
Clarkson has a great pet band. We sat close to the student pet band, so that's a pretty rowdy section. We used to have season tickets on the glass. We had players smash through the glass just a few seats away from us, one game. So, yeah, so a
Uh,
lot of vivid memories there.
now that sounds fun. That's some all right. So now, okay, so you
Yep,
make it sound like you're in a pretty small town. So if I come up there, besides going to a hockey game,
yep.
where are we going? What are we eating? Where are we drinking? Where
Um,
what's just I mean,
yeah,
where am I watching you play?
ton. So yeah, playing at a bunch of small bars. So I mean, like literally, 50 people to 100 people would make these places look packed. You're probably going to go have pizza at Sergi's or a sub at Drex.
All right.
You are. I mean, we don't have a lot up here, so there are a ton of restaurants. There's a ton of great little restaurants around here. Um, Jake's on the Water, Timber Tavern, the Barking Dog. I mean, these are all just small, privately owned restaurants. All sorts of stuff. There's a lot of microbreweries that are up here as well. There's not neighboring towns like in Tupper Lake and Nickelville, and uh, so yeah, a ton of stuff to do as far as like getting out and eating and drinking. There's plenty of that for sure.
You know what? That sounds like my kind of place,
Yeah,
All right. All
yeah,
right. I like it. I like it.
yeah,
Um so now if you can't, coming from the live, even though you still do some events and stuff,
yep.
um what is the one thing that you miss most about working out, like in working in the kind of the live event section as opposed to the commercial side?
So I do miss doing the sound for the opera house.
Mhm.
Like I said, I did that for I think it was about like 7 years. I got exposed to a lot of different musical groups and genres that I probably wouldn't go see on my own. Like if I saw advertising, I'm like, nah, I don't, I that's not really my cup of tea. But because they were paying me to be there, I'm like, oh, I have to listen to it. And I got to tell you, I mean, there was some of the stuff some of the groups and acts that I heard were like absolutely phenomenal. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, how naive or narrow-minded of me to not think that I would have enjoyed coming to see this on my own. Because I get like they send me the tech writer. And again, this is a very small 300 seat performing center, but they'll send me a tech writer where it's like, oh, well, we need like, 4 wedges with separate monitor mixes, and we need these, however, very specialized mics, and we need all this other stuff. And I reply back, I'm like, yeah, we've got 4 mics and 2 floor wedges with 1 monitor mix. Does that work for you? Yeah, we'll make that work. Yeah. But
There
yeah,
is no other
so
chance.
yeah, so a lot of like nationally and world recognized like folk and indie rock type uh, musicians. I can't think of any of the names off the top of my head. I've been kind of far removed from it now for quite a few years, but yeah, getting that exposure to like different genres and types of music was great. That's one thing that I probably miss.
All right. So I know you just mentioned you can't necessarily think of name, but what is an artist that you saw that you wouldn't have normally seen, and you go, "Dang, that was great." And it could even be a mainstream artist.
One name that is sticking out is Jay Unger.
Mhm.
Um, I'm googling him really quick. Um, So it was him, and I believe, yeah, Jay Unger and Molly Mason. I believe they actually are a husband and wife duo, and it's fiddle and guitar, and so they do like a lot of like folk stuff. But I mean, just those two together, I mean, their connection and their harmonies and everything else. I mean, they were just amazing. But like I said, if I had just saw it as a poster, it was like, do I want to drive out to Edwards, which is a very small rural community? It's like, oh, it's like 45 minutes away on these back twisty roads. Would I drive over to see them? Probably not. But
Hmm.
like, again, like I said, kind of narrow minded to say, oh, like we literally have like these world class musicians that are traveling to the North Country to this very unique opera house to perform. And so yeah, they're definitely one of the ones that sticks out in my mind. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Now, and that was one of the things that's interesting this last summer, and actually, especially when I kind of knew I was changing jobs. I kind of had the my 50-year midlife crisis, and so we did. I think we did 30 some concerts, my wife and I, over this
Wow.
summer. Yeah, we did like
Wow. Awesome.
everything. And I'll tell
Awesome.
you, so it's funny because we are normally like classic rock and country. Like normally we listen to
Yeah. Yeah.
country and stuff.
Yeah.
And so we did a ton of country concerts, but the top three of this summer was Taylor Swift, and then U2 at the Sphere opening night, of course,
Yep.
and Snoop Dogg. So even like the music we listen
Really.
to, we're
Yep.
not like, and the three very different genre, different
Yeah.
types of
Yeah.
music were the
Yep.
three best shows that we saw.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yep.
was summer of music. All right. Okay. So one more rapid round, and I would like to
Sure.
kind of end it on advice. So this kind of this kind of like the just you get a minute. Here's the thing. This is you're bitten put on the spot, but it's okay. The show is now yours. You can talk about anything you want to talk about. You got 1 minute ish, and you can trust me, it's gone all over the place. And your time starts now.
So because I'm on the school board, I try to get involved as much as I can. So I actually have hosted a couple of our student groups to come tour the university here because they're looking at doing things like starting up podcasts and stuff like that. And so for my advice would be for kids that are still in high school, like if you have a passion for anything that is like, IT audio related, um, there's opportunities for people to get in and do that and not necessarily have to do the whole 4 years of college. The stuff that I've learned. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, higher education is a great path for a lot of people, but it's not for everybody. But so yeah, like all the Extron stuff and QSys and Crestron. If you have a passion for it and understanding it, that's stuff that you can go out and just do on your own. I mean, you can like start taking those classes, and a lot of the first tiers of classes are usually free for those things. So I would encourage people to go check that stuff out and see if that's really something that you want to do, because in the higher education space, there's a pretty big need and demand for people in the AV, but yet still IT area to go do. Um, so yeah, that would be an advice is, take advantage of some of the stuff early on that's free to really make sure that that's kind of a path that you want to go down, and then follow it wherever it takes you. If it takes you to college and getting into more of the production side of it, great. If not, and you just want to like go play in a bar band, you can do that too.
Uh, That is great advice. And it's funny because I always think this too is like we always talk about that how we have all just kind of fallen into this side, fallen into higher, fallen into AV, but
Yeah,
it is a legit lucrative career that just people don't think
it
about and being able to
is.
get into that,
Yeah,
right? And to be
yeah,
able to share that with people, that's
yeah.
one thing we don't do well.
I would like to see earlier on in the education system. So like we've got a pretty good vocational program up here for high school students that the last 2 years they can go in and do welding and HVAC, and there is some computer side of it and stuff, but there's really nothing that is like the AV side of it. So it's the typical like like you were saying, like the AV club from the days of high school where you're pushing around the cart and the reel to reel projector and stuff like that. Those are really I think the only kind of semi-formal opportunities that high school kids would get or middle school kids get. I would like to see more early on of people that are getting involved in that stuff. And a lot of the schools, even in our area up here, as rural they're starting to have the same types of systems in their auditoriums that you'll see in higher education space. So
Hmm.
I mean, man, if I had a kid that was right out of high school that applied for a job here, an entry level job, and said, oh no, I've already been using an Extron system for 2 years, and in the high school theater club or whatever, I'd be like,
Yeah.
you've already got a leg up, kid. Yeah.
100%. 100%. Oh, I love that. I love that. So very last thing, if people want to connect with you, how can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or they can just reach out to email. So all the stuff is pretty easy. So email is first initial last name, so jyette@clarkson.edu. I think LinkedIn, I'm just like Jeff Yette, and I think on Facebook you can find me at the same. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much for joining the show. This was fantastic. I
It was.
enjoyed
It
this
was. This was great,
conversation.
Joe. I hope you run out of people to interview, and we can circle back again.
Yeah, I love this guest. So, thank you for the time. And of course, everybody, hopefully you enjoyed this. You enjoyed this conversation. As always, none of the opinions expressed here are necessarily those of our respective institution who sponsors the show. And if you did not like any of these opinions, there may be better ones next time.